The sun hung low over the cracked asphalt of Elmwood Elementary's parking lot, casting long shadows that stretched like fingers across the faded yellow lines. It was lunchtime, and the air buzzed with the chatter of children spilling out from the cafeteria doors, their laughter mingling with the distant hum of traffic on the old highway. But amid the chaos, 8-year-old Lily Harper sat alone on the curb, her small lunchbox open beside her. She wasn't eating. Her eyes, wide and solemn, fixed on the figure slumped against a weathered motorcycle parked at the edge of the lot. A man with a leather vest patched with faded insignia, his face shadowed by a scruffy beard and the brim of a worn cap. He hadn't moved in minutes, his stomach growling audibly in the quiet moments between the kids' shouts. Lily's own lunch was meager. A peanut butter sandwich wrapped in wax paper, an apple bruised from being jostled in her backpack, and a small carton of milk. At home, things were tight. Her mom worked double shifts at the diner, and dinner was often whatever was left in the pantry. But seeing the biker like that, his hands trembling slightly as he fumbled with an empty water bottle, tugged at something deep in her chest. The other kids steered clear, whispering about the scary man on the bike. But Lily didn't see scary. She saw hunger, the kind that mirrored the empty fridge notes her mom left on the counter. Without a word, she picked up her sandwich, walked over, and held it out. "Here," she said softly, her voice barely above the wind rustling the nearby oaks. "You look like you need it more than me." The biker, Ethan Caldwell, though she wouldn't learn his name until later, lifted his head slowly, his steel-grey eyes meeting hers. He was a ghost of a man, in his late 40s, broad-shouldered but hollowed out by years on the road. Scars from old wrecks and older regrets etched into his knuckles. The Hell's Angels patch on his vest gleamed dully in the sunlight, a symbol that struck fear in most hearts, but not this child's. Ethan hadn't eaten since dawn, his wallet light after a long ride from the dusty plains of Nevada, chasing shadows of a promise he'd made decades ago. He stared at the offering, then at the girl, her braids tied with mismatched ribbons, her sneakers scuffed from playground adventures. "Kid," he rasped, his voice gravelly from disuse. "You sure about this?" Lily nodded, a small smile breaking through. "My mum says sharing makes the world better, even for strangers." She placed the sandwich in his hand and turned back toward the school, leaving him with the weight of her kindness. As she walked away, the bell rang, pulling her into the swarm of classmates, but Ethan sat there, unwrapping the gift with hands that had once gripped handlebars through storms and bar fights. The first bite hit him like a revelation, simple, warm, undeserved. In that moment, something cracked in the armor he'd built around his heart, a reminder of the boy he'd been before the wars, before the brotherhood that demanded loyalty above all else. By afternoon, the schoolyard had emptied, but Ethan's bike remained, its chrome catching the golden hues of sunset. He finished the meal slowly, savoring the apple's crisp snap, the milk's cool relief. Lily's act wasn't just food, it was a thread pulling at the frayed edges of his soul. He'd ridden with the Angels for 20 years, a crew forged in the fires of forgotten battles, veterans like him, bound by oaths sworn in smoke-filled garages and rain-slicked highways. They'd lost brothers to the bottle, to bad deals, to the kind of justice that came with badges and warrants. Ethan himself carried the ghost of a promise to his fallen comrade Jake, who'd pulled him from a burning Humvee in some god-forsaken desert. "Watch out for the little ones," Jake had whispered with his last breath. "They keep us human." Ethan had buried that vow under layers of engine roar and midnight runs, but now, staring at the empty lunchbox he'd tucked into his saddlebag, it resurfaced like a headlight cutting through fog. He fired up the engine, the Harley rumbling to life with a deep, throaty growl that echoed off the school bricks, But he didn't ride away. Instead, he pulled out his phone, an old burner with a cracked screen, and made the call. "It's Ethan," he said when the line connected, his voice steady for the first time in hours. "You ain't gonna believe this, but I need the crew, all 60 of us. There's a school in Elmwood. Little girl just saved my hide without knowing it. We owe her." The voice on the other end chuckled, then grew serious. Word spread like wildfire through the network, texts pinging from chapter to chapter, engines revving in distant lots. By nightfall, the promise was alive again, a silent pact among outcasts who knew the value of honor in a world that had forgotten it. Meanwhile, Lily skipped home along the cracked sidewalk, her empty lunchbox swinging at her side. She didn't tell her mom about the biker, not yet. But as she pushed open the door to their small apartment, the scent of canned soup on the stove welcoming her, she felt a quiet warmth. School had been the usual, whispers about her worn clothes, the way she sat alone sometimes because her lunch was never as exciting as the others. But today, she'd done something brave. Little did she know that bravery had ignited a chain reaction, one that would roll into her life like thunder on the horizon. Ethan rode through the twilight, the wind whipping at his vest, carrying the faint scent of peanut butter and possibility. The road ahead blurred with memories. Jake's laugh, the brotherhood's unbreakable code. They'd faced down corrupt sheriffs and crooked developers before, standing for the forgotten. This time, it was for a child who'd seen past the leather and the legends. As stars pricked the sky, he wondered what tomorrow would bring. 60 bikes, engines united, ready to honor a lunch shared in innocence. It wasn't about repayment, it was about redemption, the kind that stitched broken lives back together, one quiet act at a time. The next morning dawned crisp, the desert air carrying a chill that seeped into bones. Lily arrived at school early, her backpack heavier with a note from her mum. "Be kind today." She didn't notice the distant rumble at first, the low vibration building like a storm. But as she stepped into the playground, heads turned. From the highway they came, a convoy of Harleys, polished chrome gleaming under the rising sun, 60 strong, vests emblazoned with wings and skulls, but faces set with purpose, not menace. They pulled up in formation, engines cutting off in unison, leaving a hush that amplified the playground's sudden silence. Ethan dismounted first, his boots crunching on gravel. He spotted Lily near the swings, her eyes wide as saucers. "Hey, kid," he called, holding out her lunchbox, now filled with fresh sandwiches, fruit, and a thermos of hot chocolate. "Brought this back, and some friends." The angels fanned out not as invaders, but guardians, some carrying boxes of supplies for the school's food drive, others chatting softly with wide-eyed teachers. Whispers turned to awe as Lily approached, the crowd parting. You came back?" she asked, her voice a mix of wonder and shyness. Ethan knelt to her level, the scent of leather and road dust mingling with the morning dew. "Promised myself I'd make it right. You gave me more than lunch. You gave me a reason." Behind him, the crew nodded. Their presence a shield against the world's sharp edges. Word had spread overnight. Lily's family needed help, quiet struggles with bills and bullies at school. The angels weren't there for show. They were there for justice, the moral kind that didn't need courts or headlines. As the principal hurried out, unsure how to handle the influx of outlaws, Ethan stood tall. "We're just here to lend a hand, Mom, for the girl who reminded us what family's about." The day unfolded in waves of unexpected kindness, bikes donating gear for a playground fix-up, stories shared around picnic tables, a bond forming that transcended patches and playgrounds. Lily laughed for the first time that week, sharing her new lunch with a shy classmate, the cycle of giving alive and rolling. But beneath the warmth, shadows lingered. Ethan caught sight of a sleek black SUV idling across the street, its tinted windows watching. Old enemies? Or something tied to the school's funding woes, the corruption he'd heard whispers of? The promise deepened, pulling him and his brothers into a web of loyalty tested by secrets long buried. For now, though, the roar of engines faded into cheers, a testament to honor's quiet power. The playground at Elmwood Elementary transformed under the morning sun, the air thick with the scent of fresh-cut grass and exhaust fumes cooling on hot chrome. Lily stood frozen by the swings, her small fingers clutching the straps of her backpack, as the line of motorcycles formed a protective semicircle around the school's chain-link fence. 60 riders, their vests a patchwork of wings, skulls, and faded chapter insignias, dismounted with a synchronized thud of boots that echoed like distant thunder. They weren't the monsters from whispered tales. Their eyes held a quiet resolve, hands scarred from wrenches and road maps rather than malice. Ethan led the way, his stride purposeful, the lunchbox in his grip a talisman of the debt unpaid. Principal Eleanor Vargas emerged from the office doors, her heels clicking sharply against the concrete, clipboard clutched like a shield. She was a woman in her 50s, lines etched from years of budget battles and playground mediations, her dark hair pulled into a severe bun that matched her skeptical frown. "This is a school, not a rally," she said, her voice laced with authority, though it wavered as she scanned the sea of leather. A few parents lingered at the gates, phones raised, capturing the surreal scene, bikers handing out backpacks stuffed with notebooks and crayons to wide-eyed kids, others unloading crates of canned goods for the pantry that always ran dry by month's end. Ethan stepped forward, removing his cap with a nod of respect. "Ma'am, we're not here to cause trouble. Name's Ethan Caldwell. This crew, the Iron Vipers we call ourselves these days, rides for a reason. That girl there," he gestured to Lily, who hovered at the edge of the group. "She did us a solid yesterday, shared her lunch when no one else would look twice. We're just returning the favor." The principal's gaze softened as Lily peeked out, her braids swaying in the breeze. Whispers rippled through the crowd. "That's the kid who talks to strays." Elena hesitated, then sighed, the weight of unpaid utility bills flashing in her mind. "All right, but keep it orderly. We don't need calls to the district." As the morning unfolded, the Vipers wove into the fabric of the day like threads in a worn quilt. Big Noah, a burly veteran with a tattooed forearm depicting a fallen eagle, knelt to help a group of second graders assemble a makeshift bike track from chalk lines and orange cones. His laugh boomed, deep and reassuring, turning fear into giggles. Beside him, Sarah, a rare female patch holder, her vest adorned with a custom skull and roses emblem, distributed hygiene kits to the older kids, her voice soft as she shared stories of her own rough school days. "We all start somewhere," she said to a boy with bruised knuckles, slipping him an extra bandage. The air hummed with activity, the clink of tools as riders fixed a sagging basketball hoop. The rustle of wrappers from fresh fruit baskets passed around, the faint metallic tang of oil from a Viper tuning a teacher's rusty sedan on the spot. Lily watched it all from a picnic table, her new lunchbox open before her, steam rising from the thermos like a promise kept. Ethan sat across from her, his massive frame dwarfing the bench, but his movements gentle as he poured hot chocolate. "Told you I'd make it right," he murmured, the steam curling between them. Lily sipped, her eyes tracing the scars on his hands, faint white lines like roads on a map. "Why do you ride with them? Aren't you scary?" The question hung innocent, cutting deeper than any blade. Ethan leaned back, the sun glinting off his vest, pulling memories from the shadows. He'd joined the Angels young, right after the sands of Iraq, where the roar of Humvees had drowned out the screams. Jake had been his anchor then, a lanky kid from Ohio with a grin that cut through the dust storms. They'd sworn brotherhood in a foxhole, pinky promises amid the chaos. Jake extracting the vow as shrapnel whistled overhead. "If we make it, Ethan, watch the innocents. The kids, the ones caught in the crossfire. Don't let the world grind them down." Jake didn't make it. A roadside blast claimed him, leaving Ethan with a limp and a hollow chest. The club became his family, a chosen tribe of misfits, ex-soldiers, mechanics, wanderers, bound by codes stricter than blood. They'd ridden for justice before, escorting a widow's belongings past greedy landlords, staring down a corrupt precinct that roughed up a vet for jaywalking. But the road had hardened him, buried Jake's words under layers of neutral runs and neutral faces. "Scary's what folks see first," Ethan replied finally, his voice low, gravel under tires. "But we ride for the forgotten, like you, kid. Heard from the office you get picked on sometimes. For what? Hand-me-downs. Sitting alone." Lily's cheeks flushed, the warmth of the chocolate not quite reaching her eyes. She nodded, glancing at a cluster of older boys by the fence, their smirks sharp as switchblades. "They say I'm poor, that my mum don't care." Ethan's jaw tightened, the old fire flickering. He'd seen that look before in war zones, in dive bars, in the mirror some mornings. "They don't know strength. You showed more yesterday than those punks ever will." Across the lot, the black SUV lingered, its engine idling like a predator's breath. Ethan caught it in his peripheral, the tinted glass reflecting the playground's chaos. He'd spotted it last night on the highway tail, a ghost from Nevada, perhaps, old rivals sniffing for weakness, or worse, tied to the whispers he'd overheard from a Viper contact. Elmwood wasn't just any town. Rumors swirled of school board kickbacks, developers eyeing the land for condos, while funds vanished into pockets. The Vipers had a nose for that rot, their code demanding they stand against it. If this was connected to Lily's family, her mom's endless shifts, the eviction notices tucked in saddlebags, then the ride had just begun. By recess's end, the convoy's impact rippled outward. Teachers smiled for the first time in weeks. Kids clustered around bikes with awe-struck questions, the principal jotting notes for a potential partnership. Lily stood taller, sharing her apple with the shy boy from earlier, his thanks a quiet echo of her own gesture. Ethan mounted his Harley as the bell rang, the engine's growl a farewell rumble. "We'll be back, kid. Watch your back." She waved, the lunchbox a bridge between worlds. As the Vipers rolled out in formation, dust swirling in their wake, Ethan glanced at the SUV peeling away. The promise Jake left wasn't just words, it was a call to arms, pulling him from isolation. Loyalty like this didn't fade. It revved, drawing the chosen family into the fray. Shadows lengthened across the playground, hinting at storms ahead, but for now, the air carried the sweet aftertaste of redemption, engines fading into the horizon like a vow renewed. The afternoon sun dipped behind the jagged outline of the Sierra foothills, painting the streets of Elmwood in hues of amber and rust. Lily Harper clutched her backpack tighter as she trudged home from school, the pavement warm under her sneakers, carrying the faint echo of laughter from the playground. The day's magic lingered, the bikers' unexpected kindness, the way Ethan's crew had turned the ordinary into something extraordinary, like a scene from one of her mom's old movies about heroes on wheels. But as she rounded the corner to their weathered apartment building, the warmth faded. Her mom's car wasn't in the spot by the hydrant, and the front door hung slightly ajar, a sliver of shadow spilling out like an unspoken worry. Inside, the air was stale, heavy with the scent of yesterday's coffee and unwashed dishes stacked in the sink. Lily dropped her bag by the couch, its springs creaking under invisible weight, and called out, "Mom!" Silence answered, broken only by the distant hum of a neighbor's TV filtering through thin walls. On the kitchen table sat a crumpled envelope, the kind with official stamps that made her stomach twist. Eviction notice, bold letters screaming threats of displacement. Her mom, Olivia, had been fighting these shadows for months. Double shifts at the diner, barely covering the rent hikes from the new landlords, circling Elmwood like vultures. Lily's small hands smoothed the paper, her mind flashing to the lunchbox Ethan returned, filled with more than food. It felt like a lifeline, but one she didn't know how to grasp. Across town, Ethan Caldwell guided his Harley through the winding back roads, the engine's steady thrum a counterpoint to the unease gnawing at his gut. The convoy had split after the school run, riders peeling off toward their scattered chapters, some to garages in Reno, others to safe houses along the California line. But Ethan's thoughts stayed locked on that black SUV. He'd seen its type before, sleek, anonymous. The mark of men who hid behind tinted glass and folded bills. A quick call to his contact, old-timer Marcus, confirmed the whispers. "School board's rotten, brother." Marcus had growled over the crackle of a poor connection. "Developers want that land for strip malls, funds siphoned off, families like that girl's getting squeezed out. Watch your back. Those suits don't like interlopers." Ethan pulled into a dusty motel lot on the edge of town, the neon sign flickering vacancy like a weary heartbeat. He killed the engine, the sudden quiet amplifying the crunch of gravel under his boots as he dismounted. The room was sparse, a sagging bed, a nightstand scarred from countless transients, the faint must of mildew clinging to the curtains. He spread a worn map across the table, fingers tracing routes from Elmwood to the county offices, marking spots where corruption had festered before. Jake's promise echoed in his mind, not as a ghost, but a compass. Protect the innocents, the ones ground down by the system's boot. The Vipers weren't vigilantes in the outlaw sense. They were guardians, chosen kin who rode for the voiceless. Their loyalty, a forge-tempered steel that bent but never broke. As dusk settled, his phone buzzed. A text from Sarah, the patch holder with the sharp eyes and sharper instincts. "SUV circled my ride at the gas station. Plate's a ghost. Registered to a shell corp in Sacramento. Tied to the board chair, Harlan Tate. He's the one pushing evictions." Ethan's jaw clenched, the scar on his knuckle whitening under pressure. Tate, a name whispered in biker circles, a slick operator who'd clawed his way from small-time real estate to school board kingpin, trading kids' futures for profit margins. If Tate's web touched Lily's home, the morning's goodwill was just the spark. Ethan fired back, "Rally the crew, we ride at first light. This ain't about lunch anymore, it's about keeping a promise." Miles away, Olivia Harper pushed through the diner's swinging doors, her apron stained with grease and exhaustion, the clock ticking past 8. The lunchbox incident had reached her ears via a teacher's call, bikers at school helping out, all because of Lily's heart. It warmed her, a flicker in the grind, but the envelope in her purse burned hotter. She'd scrimped for that deposit, poured every tip into keeping the roof over their heads, only for Tate's firm to hike rents and cut corners on school repairs. Whispers at the diner painted him as untouchable, backed by county brass who turned blind eyes for kickbacks. Olivia paused by the coffee urn, steam rising like her simmering resolve, and dialed a friend at the community center. "Lily's safe, but we're on the edge. Any leads on that board meeting?" Back at the apartment, Lily curled on the couch with a threadbare blanket, the TV's glow casting blue shadows on the walls. She replayed the day, the rumble of engines, Noah's booming laugh as he fixed the swings, Sarah's gentle stories that made her feel seen. But doubt crept in, a quiet storm. What if the bullies were right? What if kindness like hers just invited more trouble? The door clicked open, and Olivia entered, her face softening at the sight of her daughter. "Heard about your biker friends," she said, kneeling to brush a braid from Lily's forehead, the scent of fried onions clinging to her clothes. "You did good, baby. Real good." Lily sat up, eyes brightening. "They brought food, Mom, and fixed stuff. Ethan said they'd come back." Olivia's smile faltered, the envelope's weight pressing. "People like that. They mean well, but life's not a storybook." Yet, as she held her daughter, a seed of hope took root, the idea that maybe, just maybe, strangers could become family, their word a shield against the encroaching dark. Ethan stepped out onto the motel's balcony, the night air crisp with pine and distant rain. Stars wheeled overhead, indifferent witnesses to the roads he'd traveled, the brothers lost to potholes and pursuits. He lit a cigarette, the flame briefly illuminating the Hell's Angels patch, faded but unyielding. The SUV's shadow loomed larger now, a thread pulling at the club's code. Stand for the weak. Expose the rot. Redeem the scars of yesterday. By dawn, 60 engines would roar again, not in aggression, but in quiet defiance. A convoy bound for truth. Loyalty's engine driving them toward the heart of the storm. Lily's innocent act had cracked the world open, revealing fractures that demanded mending. In the silence, Ethan exhaled smoke toward the horizon, Jake's whisper riding the wind. The little ones keep us human, and for them, he'd ride through hell itself. The motel's gravel crunched under tires as the first Vipers arrived in the pre-dawn gloom, headlights slicing the dark like promises fulfilled. Ethan nodded to them. Burly figures dismounting, vests zipped against the chill, faces etched with the same quiet determination. Word had spread through the night. Texts chaining from phone to phone, a digital foxhole oath. They gathered around the map, voices low, plotting a path to the school board offices, not with fists but facts. Witness statements from diner folk, ledgers pieced from public records, the kind of justice that shone light on hidden ledgers. Sarah arrived last, her bike purring to a stop, helmet tucked under arm. Tate's meeting tomorrow. We crash it clean, show up as concerned citizens. For the girl. Ethan's eyes met hers, the bond of chosen family unspoken but ironclad. They'd lost too many to silence, Jake in the sands, others to the bottle's pull or the law's blind hammer. This ride was redemption's arc, bending toward the moral north. As the sky lightened to slate, engines ignited in unison, a symphony of resolve echoing off the hills. Elmwood stirred awake, unaware of the thunder building, the lunch shared in innocence now fueling a reckoning. Shadows fled before the dawn, but deeper ones waited. Corruption's web, tested by loyalty's unbreaking chain. The first rays of dawn pierced the motel's thin curtains, casting elongated shadows across the scarred wooden table where Ethan Caldwell pored over the map. The air hummed with the low murmur of engines idling outside, a chorus of Harleys breathing life into the cool morning mist that clung to the foothills. 60 riders had answered the call, their bikes lined up like sentinels in the gravel lot, chrome accents glinting faintly, vests zipped tight against the bite of early chill. Ethan folded the map with deliberate care, his calloused fingers tracing the route one last time. Straight shot to the county courthouse in downtown Elmwood, where Harlan Tate's school board meeting was set to convene at 9 sharp. This wasn't a raid, it was a revelation, armed only with truth and the weight of a child's kindness. Sarah approached from the shadows of her bike, her boots scuffing the dirt, helmet dangling from one hand like a trophy from battles past. Crew's solid, Ethan. Noah's got the statements from the diner folks. Olivia Harper's one of them. Says Tate's firm jacked rents to force folks out, then funnels the cash back through fake grants. Her voice was steady, laced with the quiet fire of someone who'd stared down worse than boardroom suits. Ethan nodded, the faint scent of dew-damp leather rising as he zipped his vest. Jake's promise burned brighter now, a beacon pulling the Vipers from their solitary roads into collective purpose. They'd seen corruption's face before, developers swallowing small towns, officials pocketing funds meant for playgrounds and pantries, but this hit different. It tangled with Lily's world, the little girl's lunch a spark that ignited their code. The convoy rolled out as the sky blushed pink, tires humming over cracked asphalt, the lead bike's taillight a guiding star through the waking streets. Elmwood unfolded around them, sleepy diners flipping signs to "Open," Newspaper boxes rattling in the breeze, the distant wail of a school bus horn. No revving engines or reckless weaves, just a measured procession, purposeful as a funeral cortege for the old ways. Ethan led, wind whipping at his beard, the vibration of the handlebars sinking with the pulse in his temples. Memories flickered like roadside signs, Jake's final grin in the desert haze, the Humvee's twisted metal, the oath sworn amid choking dust. "The little ones," Jake had said, blood flecking his lips. "Keep 'em from the grind." Ethan had drifted after that, burying the vow under miles of blacktop, but Lily's offering had unearthed it, raw and insistent. At the Harper apartment, Lily stirred under her blanket, the faint rumble of distant engines filtering through the cracked window like a lullaby from another world. Olivia was already up, brewing coffee in the dim kitchen, the pot's gurgle a small rebellion against the eviction notice still mocking from the table. She'd heard the full story from Lily the night before, the biker, the lunch, the swarm of helpers at school, and it stirred something fierce in her chest. "They sound like good people," she'd said, tucking her daughter in, though doubt lingered like the coffee's bitter aftertaste. Now, as Lily padded into the kitchen in her pajamas, rubbing sleep from her eyes, Olivia knelt to her level. "Those friends of yours, they might be coming around again today. Something about the school." Lily's face lit up, braids tousled, the memory of hot chocolate and shared apples chasing away the morning chill. By the time the Vipers reached the courthouse, a squat brick building flanked by manicured lawns and flagpoles snapping in the wind, the parking lot was filling with locals, teachers in sensible shoes, parents with strollers, a scattering of reporters sniffing for headlines. The bikers dismounted in waves, engines cutting off with a final sigh, leaving the air thick with the tang of hot metal and resolve. Ethan scanned the lot, spotting the black SUV again, parked discreetly by the oaks, its driver a silhouette behind smoked glass. Tate's watchdog, no doubt. Noah clapped a hand on Ethan's shoulder, his massive frame a wall of quiet strength. "We go in clean, brother. Voices, not volume." The group moved as one, boots thudding in unison, vests drawing stares but no alarms. Yet, inside, the boardroom buzzed with fluorescent hum and the shuffle of agendas. Harlan Tate presided at the head table, a paunchy man in a crisp suit, his smile as polished as the mahogany before him. Flanked by aides and a county sheriff's deputy nursing coffee, he droned on about fiscal responsibility, code for slashing programs to pad pockets. The door swung open mid-sentence, admitting the Vipers in a tide of leather and purpose. Gasps rippled through the room. Tate's face tightened, his pen pausing over a signature. "This is a closed session," he barked, but Ethan stepped forward. Cap in hand, the lunchbox story already whispered among the attendees via overnight texts. "Name's Ethan Caldwell," he said, voice gravel-steady, echoing off the panelled walls. "We represent folks who care about this school. Families getting squeezed while funds vanish, like the Harpers, their girls the reason we're here." Murmurs swelled. Olivia, who'd arrived early with a stack of petitions, stood from the back row, Lily peeking from behind her skirt. Tate blustered, invoking bylaws, but Sarah slid forward a folder, diner ledgers, mismatched grants, a paper trail pieced from public whispers. "This ain't about us," she added, eyes locking on Tate's. "It's about promises, to kids, to the community. You break 'em for profit. We ride to fix 'em." Tension coiled like a spring. The deputy's hand twitching toward his radio, but the room's tide turned. A teacher rose, voice trembling. "He's right. My class lost supplies last year. Where'd the money go?" Questions cascaded, the board's facade cracking under the weight of exposed truth. Ethan caught Lily's gaze across the chairs, her small nod a silent thanks, the innocence of her gesture now a lever prying open the darkness. Tate adjourned hastily, sweat beading on his brow, the SUV waiting to whisk him away. But the seed was planted, justice's slow wheel turning. Outside, as the Vipers regrouped under the noonday sun, Ethan felt the shift. Not victory, but momentum, loyalty's engine propelling them forward. Jake's whisper rode the breeze, affirming the path. Shadows of retaliation loomed, the SUV's taillights fading toward the horizon, but the chosen family stood firm, bound by honor's unbreakable chain. Lily waved from the steps, her mum's arm around her, the lunchbox swinging like a flag of hope. The ride continued, redemption's road winding toward light. If this story's touching your heart, hit that like button below. Your support keeps these tales of honor rolling. The noonday sun beat down on the courthouse steps, turning the brick facade into a furnace that baked the air thick with the scent of overheated asphalt and wilting petunias in the nearby planters. Ethan Caldwell lingered at the edge of the dispersing crowd, his boots planted firm on the warm concrete, eyes scanning the parking lot, where the Viper's bikes stood like iron guardians under the fluttering flags. The meeting's abrupt end hung in the air like exhaust smoke. Harlan Tate's hasty retreat, the murmurs of locals clutching petitions, Olivia Harper's grateful nod from across the way as she guided Lily toward their battered sedan. But Ethan's gut twisted with the familiar coil of unfinished business. The black SUV had vanished around the corner, its absence a louder warning than any siren. He mounted his Harley with a creak of leather, the engine catching on the first kick, its rumble a low growl that vibrated through his bones. The crew fell in behind him, a rolling phalanx weaving through Elmwood's midday traffic, past the diner where Olivia slung plates, its windows steamed from the lunch rush, and the school where chalk dust still lingered on the playground from the morning's fixes. Sarah rode shotgun on his flank, her visor reflecting the blue sky, while Noah brought up the rear, his massive frame a bulwark against any tail. They'd exposed the cracks in Tate's empire today, ledgers hinting at diverted funds, rents hiked to clear land for his cronies' developments. But Ethan knew men like Tate didn't fold easy. They struck from the shadows, using badges or bribes to bury threats. Back at the apartment complex, a squat row of faded stucco buildings sagging under the weight of too many winters, Olivia pulled into her spot. The sedan's tires crunching over loose gravel. Lily hopped out, her lunchbox tucked under arm like a prized relic, chattering about the big meeting where the bikers had spoken up. Ethan said, "Promises matter, Mom. Like you always say about family." Olivia forced a smile, the envelope in her purse a lead weight, but the day's events had kindled a spark. Petitions signed, questions raised that might stall the eviction. As they climbed the stairs, the door to their unit still bore the faint scuff from last week's storm, a reminder of how thin the walls were, how close the darkness pressed. Inside, the afternoon light slanted through the blinds, casting striped shadows across the threadbare carpet. Lily set the table for an early dinner, canned beans and bread from the Viper's donation, while Olivia rifled through mail, her fingers pausing on a fresh notice, a hearing date circled in red, Tate's signature scrawled at the bottom. The phone rang, shrill in the quiet, and she answered warily. "Mrs. Harper, this is Deputy Rollins from the county. We've had concerns raised about your tenancy. Might need to inspect the property tomorrow." The words landed like a punch, veiled threats wrapped in protocol. Olivia's voice steadied as she hung up, but her hands trembled, the steam from the stove blurring her vision. Lily watched from the doorway, her small face clouding. Is it because of the school? The bad man? Before Olivia could answer, a knock echoed, firm, unhurried. She peered through the peephole, heart skipping at the sight of Ethan on the landing, his vest dusted from the ride, Sarah a step behind with a canvas bag slung over her shoulder. "Heard about the meeting," Ethan said when she opened the door, his gravel voice softening at the edges. "Figured you'd need backup. Mind if we come in?" The apartment felt smaller with them inside, their presence filling the space like the warmth of a hearth long cold. Sarah unpacked the bag, groceries, sturdy locks for the doors, even a prepaid phone for emergencies, her movements efficient, born of nights spent fortifying safe houses for brothers in need. Ethan knelt by the kitchen table, level with Lily, the faint scent of road tar and pine soap clinging to him. That deputy call! It's Tate pulling strings. We've seen his type, hides behind the law to squeeze folks out. He pulled a folded paper from his pocket, a printout of county filings Sarah had dug up on the ride back. Tate's firm linked to shell companies, grants vanishing into thin air while schools crumbled and families like the Harpers teetered. We're not letting it stand. The crew's watching the roads. Any funny business, we'll know. Lily's eyes widened, tracing the ink lines like a treasure map. Like knights? On bikes? Ethan chuckled, a rare rumble that eased the tension. Something like that, kid. Jake, my old brother, taught me knights keep their word no matter the storm. As evening deepened, the group shared the simple meal. Forks scraping plates in companionable rhythm, stories weaving through the air like smoke from a distant fire. Sarah spoke of her own scars, a deployment that left her adrift until the Vipers pulled her in, their loyalty a balm for wounds no medal could heal. Olivia listened, her guard cracking, the weight of solitary battles lifting just a fraction. But outside, the twilight brought unease. Headlights swept the lot too slowly, the black SUV idling at the curb before peeling away into the gathering dusk. Ethan caught it from the window, his hand instinctively going to the knife at his belt. Not for drawing, but for readiness. "They're testing us," he murmured to Sarah, who nodded, her eyes sharp as flint. Night fell heavy, stars pricking the velvet sky above the complex. The Vipers posted watches in shifts. Noah's truck parked discreetly down the block, engines silent but vigilant. Ethan stepped onto the fire escape for air, the metal cool under his palms, the city hum a distant lullaby. Jake's face flickered in his mind, not as a spectre but a steady light, the promise to shield the innocent, forged in fire and fulfilled in quiet acts. Lily's kindness had unraveled him, pulling threads of redemption through the club's iron code. This wasn't just about one girl or one eviction. It was the stand against a world that chewed up the vulnerable, a chosen family's roar against corruption's whisper. Inside, Lily drifted to sleep on the couch, the blanket tucked by Olivia's hand, dreams filled with chrome steeds and unbreakable oaths. But in the witching hour, tires screeched, a shadow vehicle circling closer, lights off, intent coiled like a spring. Ethan's phone buzzed, Noah's text, terse and urgent. "They're moving, rally point, now." The engine's call pulled him back to the bike, the night alive with purpose. Loyalty's chain tightened, drawing the Vipers into the fray, the moral storm breaking as dawn approached. For Lily, for Jake, for the honor that bound them, the ride pressed on, engines humming with the weight of vows renewed. The witching hour cloaked Elmwood in a shroud of inky silence, broken only by the occasional rustle of wind through the scrub oaks lining the apartment complex. Ethan's Harley idled low in the shadows of the fire escape, its exhaust a faint whisper against the night's chill, as he waited for the crew to converge. The text from Noah burned in his pocket like a lit fuse. The black SUV had doubled back, circling the block with predatory patience, its silhouette cutting through the sodium glow of distant street lamps. Sarah flanked him on her bike, her posture rigid, the faint gleam of her vest's patches catching moonlight like scattered stars. The air carried the sharp tang of impending rain, mingling with the metallic bite of engine oil, a sensory prelude to the storm about to break. From the alley, Noah's truck rumbled into view, headlights dipped, followed by a dozen more Vipers peeling in from side streets, engines muted to a growl, forming a loose perimeter around the Harpers building. They weren't here for spectacle. This was the quiet work of guardians, chosen kin answering a call, etched in blood and brotherhood. Ethan killed his ignition, the sudden hush amplifying the distant crunch of tires on gravel, the SUV, emboldened, edging closer to the curb below Olivia's window. He signaled Sarah with a gloved hand, and she nodded, slipping toward the front like a shadow, her boots silent on the dew-slick pavement. Inside the apartment, Olivia bolted upright on the couch, the blanket pooling at her waist, her heart pounding in rhythm with the faint vibrations seeping through the floorboards. Lily stirred beside her, small breaths even in sleep, oblivious to the tension coiling in the air like smoke from a hidden fire. The eviction notice lay crumpled on the coffee table, its edges curling in the dim lamplight, a symbol of Tate's grasping fingers. Olivia had glimpsed the truth in the courthouse that morning. The Viper's folder of discrepancies, whispers of audits triggered by their stand, but doubt lingered, a cold knot in her chest. The knock at the door earlier had been a lifeline. Ethan's crew turning their sparse home into a temporary fortress, with reinforced locks and watchful eyes. Now, as footsteps echoed outside, she reached for the phone, fingers hovering over the emergency dial. Ethan descended the stairs in measured strides, his shadow merging with the building's facade, the worn leather of his vest creaking softly. The SUV's door creaked open, spilling a figure onto the lot, a stocky man in a dark jacket, his movements jerky, illuminated briefly by the interior light. Not Tate, but one of his enforcers. Ethan recognized the type. Hired muscle from the underbelly of Sacramento deals, the kind who intimidated tenants into silence. The man approached Olivia's door, a clipboard in hand, official pretext for the inspection Rollins had threatened, his free hand dipping toward a pocket, the glint of something metallic catching the light. "Evening," Ethan called out, voice steady as gravel under tires, stepping into the open. The man froze, eyes narrowing at the biker emerging from the gloom, then widening as the Vipers materialized, Noah's bulk blocking the alley, Sarah circling from the side, others fanning out like spokes on a wheel. Engines ticked coolly in the background, a subtle reminder of the thunder they could unleash. Deputy said inspections tomorrow. You lost? The enforcer's jaw worked, sweat beading despite the chill, his clipboard trembling slightly. County business. Step aside. Sarah moved in, her presence a calm counterpoint, voice cutting clean. We know your business, Tate's shell games, rents funneled to his pockets, schools starved while he eyes the land. That ends tonight. She held up her phone, screen glowing with a live feed from a Viper drone hovering overhead, capturing the SUV's plates and the man's face in high definition. Noah loomed closer, his shadow swallowing the enforcer, a low rumble in his chest like distant thunder. Walk away, or we ride this straight to the feds, your boss's ledgers, your prints on the threats. The man hesitated, eyes darting to the encircling bikes, the weight of 60 souls bound by unyielding loyalty pressing in. Rain began to patter, soft at first, then insistent, drumming on metal roofs and turning the gravel slick. He backed toward the SUV, clipboard slipping from numb fingers, scattering papers that fluttered like defeated flags. The door slammed, tires spinning mud as it fled into the night, taillights blurring in the downpour. Ethan watched it go, the tension easing from his shoulders, Jake's whisper a faint echo in the rain. The little ones, safe from the grind. Upstairs, Olivia peered from the window, relief flooding her as the Vipers regrouped below, their silhouettes etched against the storm. Lily woke then, rubbing her eyes, the patter of rain a soothing rhythm. "The Knights?" she murmured, pressing her face to the glass. Olivia pulled her close, the warmth of her small body chasing the chill. "Yeah, baby," keeping their promise. By morning, the pieces fell into place. Tate's web unraveled under scrutiny, audits launched from the courthouse exposure, the evictions stalled by community outcry. The Viper's quiet vigil, recordings shared with a sympathetic reporter, statements from diner allies, tipped the scales, justice's moral arc bending toward light without a single shot fired. Dawn broke clear, the rain-scented air fresh as the convoy reformed one last time outside the school. Ethan dismounted, approaching Lily on the playground, her backpack slung over one shoulder, Olivia watching from the gate with a tentative smile. He handed her a small patch from his vest, a viper coiled around a shield, symbol of protection. "For the girl who fed a stranger," he said, kneeling in the mud-puddled grass, the sun warming his back. "You reminded us what honor looks like. We'll ride by when you need us. Family doesn't fade." Lily pinned it to her shirt, her grin bright as the rising light, the cycle of kindness complete. Ethan mounted up, the engines roaring to life in farewell, a symphony of redemption rolling toward the horizon. Scars healed not in isolation, but in the bonds chosen, promises kept through storms and shadows. Elmwood stood a little taller that day, the air humming with the legacy of quiet courage, loyalty's engine carrying them all forward. If this tale of unbreakable promises has moved you, thank you for joining the ride. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We've got more stories of honor and heart coming your way.